Okay, I think everybody knows Scott Straw, KB4KBS.
Who?
He's been a vice president and done a lot of things for the club. We really appreciate him coming and describing his exploits on JT65 on the HF bands for us here tonight. Thanks, Scott.
All right, I'm going to use this head-worn mic, so you can hang on to that one. And thank you, guys. I'm thrilled to be here. And I... Did I just make it go away?
Got one
I
sentence.
can't see how you did it.
I don't either. I'm going to move right over here in case it was an antenna thing. But I keep missing these meetings because they keep calling me out of town. And tomorrow morning at 5:50, I board a plane from Miami. Come back Friday, and then Saturday I leave to go to Washington, D.C. for the month of March. So I won't be at the March meeting. And this is going to be really frustrating if it keeps going in and out. So I'm going to hold it here and see if it can diagnose, troubleshoot what's calling it. Anyway, I don't get to do a lot of hamming because of my travel schedule. Sometimes I'll take my little Baofeng with me, but even then I rarely turn it on. If I do, it's to listen to the NOAA weather station in whatever city I'm in. When I am home, I like to go up to my station and fire up and run JT65 because I can do a lot of other things while I'm doing it. We'll go to the next slide. These two guys have made some very fabulous, very good PowerPoint presentations on JT65. Joe Taylor, of course, the JT in JT65, and Steve Ford, WB8IMY, who works for QST, has also done a bunch of JT65 stuff. In fact, he's even written a book, Work the World, JT65, JT9. So I have freely stolen from these guys and for others. One of my favorite PowerPoint presentations I robbed from, Why I Love JT65, or It's More Fun Than Watching Paint Dry. Anyway, JT65 is a form of digital communications. It's kind of like RTTY, kind of like PACTOR, AMTOR, and all the other digital modes where you take audio tones from your computer, modulate them through your radio, and then at the other end, the radio of the receiver takes those audio tones and decodes them into intelligible gibberish or words or whatever it ends up being.
Bits and bytes.
Bits and bytes, exactly. Joe Taylor, obviously, the JT in JT65, created the whole mode for moon bounce and meteor scatter and low power communications using the ionosphere. But we mere mortals co-opted it and started using it on HF. It uses a synchronizing tone and 64 additional tones, hence the 65 in JT65. And so that's the essence of what it is. We'll go on to the next slide. During each transmission, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because how many people have ever done a JT65 contact? All right. How many have ever heard a JT65 transmission and would like to be a JT65 user? So you understand the concepts. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but each transmission lasts 46.8 seconds. It's going to start at the top of the minute, plus or minus about 2 seconds, depending on how precise your particular computer clock is. And it only sends 13 characters. So you have to really be good or be very Spartan in what you say if you're going to communicate other than your call sign and a signal report. On the air, it kind of sounds like somebody playing music. When we go back into the demo later, I'll turn up the volume on the radio and you can hear it. And it just sounds like, you know, maybe some presentation, some movie score from a sci-fi flick or something. When you look on the waterfall, it kind of reminds me of player piano paper. And most of you are old enough to remember that if you're having a musical background. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can Google it. Or LMGTFY. Let me Google that for you. So a JT65 contact is designed to exchange just enough information to be a valid QSO. your location, your call sign, a signal report, which is measured in dB, and a grid square if you're doing a moon bounce contact, because that's important. The other requirements, of course, to have a valid QSO would be a date, a time, a band or frequency, and a mode. So if you've got those 5 pieces of information, and the other station can verify those 5 pieces of information, it's a valid QSO. It uses a very sophisticated digital signal processing, DSP. I don't know why it's not called a DSP, because it's audio DSP. But I guess it also, digital audio, which is ones and zeros in its essence, so digital signal processing. It relies on redundancy because those 13 characters are sent in a repeated pattern, so you get a good chance of decoding it even if you lose most of the information because of interference. Next slide. I'm going through this quick because I want to save time to go back and do the hands-on stuff. And if you have questions, let's ask them back there so we can get through this quickly. I think that's when it's going to be the most fun. We talked about the station clocks having to agree within about 2 seconds or so, because at the top of the minute, you start transmitting, and 46.8 seconds later, you stop, and then your computer does all of its number crunching and decodes all the stuff that it heard. Actually, when you just kind of rest, recover. Then it gets to the top of the minute, and those people who heard you start sending, and they send for 46.8 seconds. And at the end of that 46.8 seconds, then your computer does all the number crunching and decodes all the stations it heard, including the ones that are trying to call you, the ones calling CQ, the ones calling somebody else that you can't hear. Anyway, and so that's how it goes. And because of that, they have to be pretty precise. You know, if you start 4 or 5 seconds, 10 seconds into it, then the other guys may not decode what you send. They take turns transmitting on even or odd minutes. And we were talking with John earlier, who does a lot of JT65 on moon bounce. Once you pick even or odd, you kind of want to stay with that, because I work a station, I'm sitting on odds, and I work a station, I say 73 and I'm done. Well, somebody who sees my call sign and says, hey, I haven't worked him, I've worked everybody else but him, so I'm going to send him a response to his CQ. If you then flip over to the evens, and you start sending, he's going to be sending on evens while you're sending on odds. If you switch over and start sending on evens, you're going to be sending when he's sending. So pick one and stay with it. If you want to swap to one, because sometimes you work them all and you say, well, let's flip over and see who's been transmitting while I'm transmitting. Take a time out for about a minute or two so that you can get, 2 or 3 passes of the waterfall. Then flip over to the other side and send a CQ, so that there's not somebody who's trying to call you while you're calling CQ and you never hear each other. All right. Timing is everything. Your internet-connected computer needs to reach out and talk to a network time server. The easiest way to do that is to use a network time protocol. And David Mills, I found this on Wikipedia, and I thought, if ever there was a prototypical picture of a ham radio operator, this is it. This is a professor retired from University of Delaware, but you think about what this man has done to the computing world, not just ham radio, but in the computer world of networking. All the servers, all the switches, all the communications that happens relies upon network synchronization. And this is the guy who helped to develop the protocol, one of the very first protocols for the internet, back in the days of DARPA, that said, okay, we're going to synchronize all of our devices using this network time protocol. Anyway, so bit of trivia. Anybody who's never heard of NTP before? I won't spend a lot of time on it. If you do computing, you understand. But it's one of the oldest internet protocols, network time protocol. If you've got a time protocol software, you'd be amazed how many network time servers there are that you can use as a reference. And of course, they're all tied together as well. Just in case you need to know, UGA has timex.usg.edu, and if you want to be more elite, rolex.usg.edu. So those are two NTP time servers over in Athens. Multiple free software programs available that run in the background, use very little memory. Actually, I have a network time server on all of my computers, even the ones that I don't use for ham radio, just because it's free and it makes nice. The one I use now is called Dimension 4. It's from thinkman.com. But as I was doing my research, more people are going to this Meinberg program. Meinberg is a German maker of hardware for synchronizing all of your LAN equipment. And so MeinbergGlobal.com, there's a website, but if you just type Meinberg into your, let me Google that for you, page, I'm sure you can find it. Both of these are free. The other things you're going to need hardware, an HF radio with SSB capability, and you do use upper sideband even on 80 meters and on 760 meters. Your computer needs to have internet access for time sync. It needs to have a USB or serial interface so that you can talk to the external sound card. So I think that takes us to the external sound card page. These are pictures of three most popular external sound cards: the SignalLink USB, MFJ sound card radio interface, and the Rig Blaster Advantage from West Mountain Radio. Now this is the front of these devices. And most of you network guys, this is what you like to see because you're a front person. Me, an AV guy, I'm a behind person. I'd rather see the behinds of things. So, we'll just let that one slide. But you understand what I'm saying. All right. They're all going to have pretty much the same thing in common. They're going to have a USB port or a serial port that will interface to your sound card, to your computer, where the sound information runs back and forth over the USB cable. The serial is used here and here for that purpose. They're going to have inputs and outputs on these particular models, and they're very obviously labeled. You need audio from your radio to your computer, audio from your computer to your radio so they can send the information back and forth. This guy right here is the one I use. All that happens over the USB port. If I need to be able to hear what's being sent, I can hook up to the speaker or the monitor. But these are your interface boxes that you put in between the computer and the radio. Now, you fancy guys like Mr. WK4U, who has a what do you call those SDR things? Yeah, a flexible radio. A flexible radio. You don't need one of these because it's all built in. It's all computerized anyway. But for us mundane pedestrians, that's what we have to use. The most digital, all right, most of your digital software, and this is maybe inaccurate, and you can help me if I'm wrong, but FLDigi DM780 don't support JT65. You have to use a separate, different piece of software for JT65. Now, there have been a lot of folks who've helped to make that not as painful as it used to be. And I think that in the fullness of time, DM780 may start to support JT. I'll refer to it, a DM780 person who would know. Is it going to support JT65, you think, someday?
They will not for one reason.
Okay.
Joe Taylor wants it open source.
There you go. Okay.
And they won't
All right.
do that.
So, all right. So because it's an open source code, the proprietary software manufacturers aren't wild about it. All right. So JT65 revolution on the HF bands, when we actually kind of co-opted it away from the Meteor guys. Joe Large, W6CQZ, created this piece of software called JT65HF. It's what I run. and it works wonderfully, but Joe said it's, at some point, enough is enough. It works, it ain't broke, I ain't gonna fool with it anymore, and he just kind of left it alone and let it go. And we'll go on to the next slide, and a couple of guys over in Europe, HB9HQX and DL3VCO, took Joe's software, enhanced it, made it a little better. The HB9HQX variant actually will stick a little flag on the waterfall and tell you what the call sign is once it's determined by the decoding. Some other things. DL3VCO, it's called the Comfort, and I'm not sure much about it. I know that it exists. The other thing about these is that they provide links with the popular software logging programs that will allow you to easily take your contacts and dump them into your logging software program without having to do double work. I've downloaded all these. I probably will go with HB9HQX at some point this year if I am sitting around and bored and don't have anything else better to do than to start loading a piece of software. So the software, also Joe Taylor himself created a software called WSJTX. And after the latest revision, I think it's 1.7, it's really become very popular, and more people are using it, and especially now that JT65HF has kind of gone by the wayside. The other thing about WSJTX is that it receives JT9 signals. A little bit about JT9, just in case you have you get bored with JT65, which I haven't yet. You can go to JT9. It's about 2 dB more sensitive, and it uses the 9 FKSK signal. And if you see it on the waterfall, it just looks like a little thin strip. If you ever hear it, it sounds like an audio test tone or feedback. It's just a pure sounding tone, but it's decodable, intelligible information. All right. So this is sort of a little brag. I'm at about 72 confirmed JT65 countries, working my way to get the DXCC, even though the DXCC people don't recognize JT65 as a separate accomplishment. For me, it'll make me feel better. Pardon me. And so anyway, once I run out of things to do with JT65, I'm going to go to JT9. So that's enough about me bragging. This is what the two pieces of software look like. This is the WSJTX. This is the waterfall portion of it, which is a detachable movable window. And this is the decoding screen for WSJTX. This is the JT65HF screen, the waterfall, and all the interaction screens right here. Both of these are screen captures from the internet. They're not mine. So anyway, next slide. The JT65 decoding screen, you'll see back there when we go back and look, you've got all these different pieces of information across. You've got the time, the sync signal, which is sort of a measure of how well it's being received. You got your dB measurement, which is the signal strength. Your DT is a offset from top dead center 0, and then the DF is where on the waterfall it lands. But go back one screen. I didn't plan this as well as I should have. On this one, this is 0. Minus 500, minus 1,000, plus 500, plus 1,000. And so when you're looking at the DF, you can tell, okay, this is 363. That means you go 1, 2, 3. So it's somewhere out here. Minus 466 would be somewhere right about here. You really can't see, but it's there. Over here, you'll notice these numbers are in the thousands, 1224, 1119, 1345, because this scale starts at 0 and goes, it only shows 2200 here. And so when you're looking at where these signals are being decoded,
And we're back.
when you're looking at where these signals are being decoded, if you want to know, okay, well, which one is this one? Well, 1345. You come up here, 12, 13, halfway between 12, between 1300 and 1400, that little red dot, that would be this guy right here. So that helps you know what you're looking at when you're seeing this stuff decode. All right, next slide. And so, yep, we'll move on to the next one. And so here it is laid out for you in a bigger format so you can see, again, the better the sync signal, the better the reception. You got a 10, you got a 12, those are -5, -10. You got a 4 with -6, that's probably a pretty lousy signal. But you've got a 2 with a -24. In my shack, I can see -24's decode, but I'm pretty well certain that I'm not going to reach them with my measly 25 watts, which by JT65 standards is almost running full legal limit. If you really want to push the envelope, you could go to 30 watts, but that's absolutely as far as you ever want to go. Most people can be quite content if they've got an outdoor antenna of any report to run 5 to 10 watts and you can work the globe. So you'll see that when a station sends out a CQ, the bar turns green, that's written into the software. If the station calls you and your call sign is decoded, it's going to be red to kind of catch your attention. In both of these software programs, all you need to do is take your little mouse and double click on the bar and it will load the appropriate message, and at the appropriate moment it will transmit it. So, that's why I can check my email and surf the web and do all that other stuff while I'm doing JT65. I just have to be conscientious to be ready to go at the top of the minute. All right, now, how many of you who are JT65 users, and I can see your hands in the dark, knew about JT Alert before I told you about it just now? All right, I see a few. Why didn't you tell me? I just discovered this like in January. This is a game changer for me. And we'll see when we go back there. But this guy named Laurie, L-A-U-R-I-E, in Australia, a VK, wrote this fabulous program that is a daughter program to both WSJT and JT65HF that will listen to the information coming from the master program, decode the call signs into a little palette below, and also keep a list in a separate log if you like. And if you interface it with your logging program, it will go through your logging program and find every last one of your JT65 contacts and figure out who you haven't worked, who you need, and who you've already worked as well. So when you're running JT Alert, and I think we can go to the next slide, and there we go. You interface with all these programs. Neil, this is, I think, going to be taken care of.
You got it backwards. Version 5 is no longer supported.
No, for Laurie.
Yes.
Laurie supports 5. He doesn't support 6, but I think they're working on resolving that. That was a very interesting thread that I was reading about all that went into that, and I won't go into it here. You probably know what I'm talking about. So that may be changing at some point in the future. But these are all the different formats that, all the different logging programs that you can work with. Go to the next screen. There's a little bar, and it will put a call sign in here. It'll color code it and say, hey, you need this guy for worked all continents, or you need this guy for worked all states on this band, or you need this guy, he's a brand new DX, or this guy, you've already worked him. It's a fabulous program. And it will send spots to a website called Ham Spots. Again, another one program that Laurie runs. I use PSK Reporter, I'll talk about it in just a moment. But again, it helps you to know where the fish are when you're out there fishing. All right, PSK Reporter. This one I love. Whenever I'm running JT65, this is also running, and we'll see when we go back there. Graphically, all the software programs that support JT65 have the ability to link to pskreporter.info. It, in the background, sends out every minute an encapsulated summary of all the stations that you heard on your decode. And they are all assimilated in one website and appear graphically on a gray line map of the world. Y'all, whatever that map's called. Excuse me?
Google Maps. It's Google's.
Well, okay, it's a Google map of the globe. And it will show you where, I mean, it's got the gray line on it, and it'll show you where you can be heard, and a little bit about the station that actually heard you, whether they're using a wet noodle or a tri-bander or a vertical, whatever. It's great for knowing that, yes, you're transmitting, nobody's answering you. You know, you always want to know, am I being heard? You know, they've got this wonderful reverse beacon network for CW, and this is kind of the same thing for JT65. All right, there's a picture of it. This is an actual screen grab from my station. I wish I could tell you the exact date, but I'm on 20 meters. And as you can see, a whole bunch of people in the United States heard me. The little time marker is how long ago they heard me. And it updates every 5 minutes or so. So I think at this point I had quit transmitting and was just fooling around. But you know, Cape Verde and Canary Islands, South America, all the way down to Argentina. So even over here in Australia, with my little 25 watts and 20 meters, I was being heard. Still not sure what the difference is between the black text and the white text, but I think I may have figured that out at one time, but then I forgot.
5 minutes.
Less than 5 minutes? I'll take that. Oh, that one says 8. But anyway, this is a great tool. Great tool if you're going to JT65. pskreporter.info. You can just plug in the information at the top. You see on 20 meters, show signal sent by the call sign KB4KBS using JT65 over the last 15 minutes. Go, boom. And I just let that run in the background. I believe that is my last slide. All right, questions before we give away prize money and then go back and look at the demo? Yes, sir.
PSK Reporter will do more than JT65 though, right?
It will do everything. I think primarily it was started for PSK 31. I think the JT65 fans have kind of co-opted into being theirs, but it also show every other digital mode and CW and RIDI. The key is what are the monitoring stations listening for? And the bulk of the monitoring stations that are reporting to pskreporter.info are listening for JT65. Yes, sir.
How much bandwidth does JT65 use?
For sending, you would ask me a hard technical question. That much. Well, if JT9 is 9, I would think. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. Yes, sir.
What are a couple of, or a few of the popular VFX for these different modes?
Good question. On the primary bands, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10, 0.76. So, well, 35, 76, 7076, 14076, 21076, 28076 are the primary place to find JT65 signals. Now, when you start talking about the work bands, which would be 30 and 17 and 12, it's different. And I don't have those memorized. I wrote them written down and stored, and I have a little clicks for it. Yes, sir.
Is JT9 the same frequency?
JT9 is actually north of that to 78. So 2 megahertz north at 078. Kilohertz at 078. Yes, sir.
The bandwidth is 200 hertz.
200 hertz. 200 hertz.
And an important frequency is 18038.
18038.
That's the 160 frequency.
It's not 18076. It's 18038.
18.
1838. 1838 on
That
160.
frequency.
It's all upper sideband too.
Yes, it's all upper sideband.
Get it backwards.
Yes, sir. You're up next.
Yeah, if you're linking with any of those other programs, and if you have cat control, it'll set, you just click on this HF program, JT65, and it'll set your radio to the right frequency.
Yeah, you tell it what band you want to be on, and it'll tell you, it'll put you on the right frequency. Yes, sir.
What if you don't have internet connection? What can you use for time based? Can you use a GPS?
If your GPS interfaces to your laptop, I mean, that's how you, then yeah. Just however you keep your laptop synchronized to the rest of the world, WWV or whatever, yeah. Yes, sir, John.
At least with X, if you set your bandwidth for both receive and transmit to 4 kilohertz, you can watch all of JT65 and JT9 on the same waterfall, and depending which signal you click, it will give you either JT65 or JT9, depending whatever the signal you were receiving was.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it'd be to go back to one of those that shows the WSJTX. There we go. So, yeah, if you've got a waterfall that's wide enough, you'll see JT65 down here and JT9 up here. In fact, I'm looking at these right here, and I would say that's JT9 based upon how wide it is versus JT65, which would be 200 hertz wide. So, yeah, with this, it gives you the ability, and in fact, you can tell it an @ sign or a pound sign or an octothorpe for you old guys, or hashtag for you young guys, is JT65, and then the @ sign or the ampersand for you old guys is for JT9 when it decodes. So that's the WSJTX. Other questions? And let me check my watch. Good, we're right on my time. Question?
Operating systems. JT65HF will operate online for Mac OS X and Linux, but primarily designed for PC. And
WSJTX will run on Linux.
WSJTX will run on Linux, there you go.
And
And haven't you run one or the other on a Raspberry Pi?
I think it was WSJT.
Okay. So, I mean, if you're really like up there on the bleeding edge and you want to use a Raspberry Pi for all this, you can get one that'll work on a Raspberry Pi. All right, other questions? All right.